Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into two of the biggest ideas out there, divine grace and truth. We're going to look at a source text that pulls apart these concepts using four really different biblical passages, all to figure out what they tell us about hope, about meaning, about what really matters.
Okay, so let's get right to it. The source material basically asks this central question. What actually guides our lives? What gives us real hope, real blessing? And the answer it puts forward? It all comes down to two things: God's grace and His word of truth.
So here's our game plan. We'll talk about the power of presence, then grace as the ultimate gift. From there, we'll get into a test of truth to find the nature of the word itself, and then, tie it all together at the end. All right, first up, the source points us to this story from 1 Samuel. And what's cool about this is it's meant to show that divine truth, well, it's not just some lofty idea, it's something with actual physical power. And this is so important to get. We're talking about the Ark of the Covenant here, and the source makes it clear. This was not just a fancy wooden box. No way. It was seen as the very symbol of God's glory, His actual presence. It was like a physical bridge between heaven and earth, And that presence, it had some serious real-world effects. So check out how this all unfolds. First, the Philistines capture the ark, right? They think they've won the ultimate prize. They stick it in their temple right next to their own god Dagon. But then what happens? The next morning, Dagon's statue is found fallen, broken, right in front of the ark. And it doesn't stop there. Suddenly, these awful plagues start hitting their cities. It got so bad that the Philistines finally figured it out. They had to send the ark back. The message the source is pulling from this is pretty stark. Falsehood, represented by Dagon, just crumbles in the face of divine presence. Okay, so from that very physical story, let's shift gears a bit. We're going to move from a symbol of presence to a huge theological idea, grace. Now, this is where things get really interesting. The source sets up this powerful contrast to explain grace. On the one hand, you've got Adam's disobedience, one act, and the consequence, the text says, was sin and death for everyone. But on the other hand, you have Christ's single act of grace, and it's framed as the exact opposite, a totally free gift that brings life to everyone. It's a complete 180. And this verse from Romans is really the linchpin for the whole idea. Think about this for a second. The text points out that this grace isn't a reward for being good. Not at all. It's a gift that was given while we were still sinners. That's what makes it so radical. It's not about earning anything. It's about receiving something you absolutely didn't deserve. That right there is the heart of what the source means by God's grace. So that leads to a pretty obvious question, right? If this incredible grace and powerful truth are out there, why isn't everyone just on board? Well, the source uses a really intense story from the prophet Jeremiah to dig into that very problem, the struggle to figure out what's true and what isn't. Okay, so the scene is set in Egypt. The people of Judah are there, and Jeremiah the prophet shows up with a message from God. It's a direct warning. Stop with the idol worship or it's gonna end badly. And their response? They basically say, nope, not gonna do it, a flat-out refusal. It's this incredible moment of human desire clashing head-on with the divine word. And this is the absolute core of the conflict. The people's argument is actually kind of understandable from their perspective. They say, look, back when we worshipped the Queen of Heaven, things were great. We had plenty of food. We were doing just fine. Their truth is based on what felt good on their past experiences. And God's response through Jeremiah is just, wow. It's essentially a challenge. Okay, you've made your choice. Now we're all going to find out whose word stands, mine or yours. Okay, so this leads us to our final piece of the puzzle. We've seen the word's power, we've seen it comes from grace, and we've seen how hard it can be to choose it. But what is this word exactly? The source points to Psalm 19 for kind of a spec sheet, a list of its qualities. And what's so great about this is that it's not vague at all. The source highlights these very specific, active qualities. It's not just a dusty rule book. It's something that acts. It's described as perfect, something that literally revives your soul. It's trustworthy, making even the simple wise. It's right, so it brings joy to your heart. And it's radiant. It gives light to your eyes. It's like turning on the lights in a dark room, giving you real clarity. All right, so we've got the ark, we've got grace from Romans, that showdown in Jeremiah, and the definition from the Psalms. Let's put all these pieces together and see what the big picture looks like. So here's the synthesis our source text is building. First, the word has tangible power, right? We saw that with the ark. Second, it all comes from unearned grace, like we saw in Romans. It's a gift. But, and this is a big but, it's not automatic. It requires our discernment. We have to choose it over other things that might seem true, just like in that story with Jeremiah. And finally, why would you choose it? Because of its inherent qualities, those life-giving attributes from the Psalms that bring joy, wisdom, and life.
And that brings us to the final takeaway. The source doesn't just wrap everything up in a neat bow. It leaves us with a real challenge. It makes a strong case for a single, unchanging, life-giving truth. But then it turns the question over to us. In today's world, which is just flooded with conflicting information and competing truths, the question is, what's your anchor? How do you figure out what's real? How do you decide which word will stand in your own life?